Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
And we're halfway through the month of December. Christmas is coming up pretty soon. You might have some time off to travel or something like that. And if you travel, you might be going to a museum. And, of course, people here in Taiwan go to museums all the time. But maybe we need to review something called museum etiquette, how we should behave in museums, because it seems like there have been a lot of bad people in the world out there doing nasty things in museums.
Yeah, a lot of people misbehaving. Some of the actions and the behavior we've seen, Tom, seem to be just like we're watching little kids, who are 3 or 4. But these are adults, grown people who are acting like children. So we'll just talk about some of the obvious etiquette that you should display and how to behave well in museums, which are filled with priceless works of art. So let's get started. We're going to read through our lesson first.
Why museum etiquette matters more than ever. In June, headlines shocked the art world when a visitor damaged a 17th century painting at the Uffizi Galleries in Florence, Italy, while posing for a photograph. This was not an isolated event. Recently, similar disasters have been reported worldwide, from a child damaging a Mark Rothko painting to a tourist breaking an exhibit by pretending to sit on it. Such incidents highlight why museum etiquette is increasingly crucial. First, we must recognize that art and historical objects are fragile. Once damaged, they may never regain their original condition. Many common actions, though harmless at first glance, can have grave consequences. For instance, touching artwork leaves fingerprints and oils that gradually deteriorate surfaces. Furthermore, flash photography accelerates the fading of pigments and textiles. Large equipment such as tripods or selfie sticks may bump into exhibits and cause accidents. Each of these actions not only harms the displays, but also diminishes the experience for others. Given these concerns, here are some recommendations for responsible museum visits. Before entering, deposit large bags in lockers to avoid accidental contact with items. Always consult and follow photography policies. Some museums prohibit pictures altogether. Once inside, maintain a respectful distance from exhibits. Typically, arm's length is best. Since sound travels easily in exhibition halls, use phones and audio guides quietly and speak in soft tones. Finally, never consume food or drinks in exhibition areas, as spills and crumbs can contaminate displays and attract pests. Unfortunately, as we've seen from recent incidents, these basic rules are sometimes ignored in the rush to document museum visits. That's why we must all act responsibly. Remind friends if they overlook a rule and notify staff if you witness inappropriate behavior. By practicing thoughtful etiquette, we ensure these treasures are preserved for future generations to appreciate. Okay, it's time now to discuss the contents of our lesson. And we're answering a question. Why does museum etiquette matter? Well, we're going to tell you why museum etiquette matters more than ever, okay? So, of course, it really matters. Etiquette, of course, is manners, how you should behave in certain situations. If you travel to other countries, it's a good idea to know a little bit about their customs and their traditions and, of course, their etiquette. When to say thank you, when to enter the room, whether you should wear shoes inside the house or whatever. Those are all things you need to know. They're just manners. And in June, a couple of months ago, headlines shocked the art world when a visitor damaged a 17th century painting at the Uffizi Galleries in Florence, Italy, while posing for a photograph. Okay, so this does happen sometimes when you travel. You want to take some pictures of yourself in front of the artifacts or the works of art or whatever because you want to, have a memory of it forever, or you want to post it online or something like that. But somebody was taking a picture and they damaged a work of art. It's a painting actually from the 17th century which would be the 1600s. That's about, what, 400 or 500 years old or something like that?
Yeah, that's old.
And they damaged it while they were posing for a photograph. I don't know exactly what they did. Maybe they bumped into it, or maybe they accidentally spit on it or something like that. I don't know, but in any case, they damaged the painting, and of course, that's a very precious work of art, and it probably cannot recover.
Yeah, even sometimes if they can clean them, some of the damage is so drastic that they can't completely, put it back into its original condition or restore it the way it used to look. So you got to be careful, guys. So here is a 17th century painting that's in the 1600s that we're talking about. Florence has some of the world's best art. If you want to see great art, go to Florence, Italy. It's even got better art than Rome does, in my opinion. But this was happening while they were posing. Everybody wants to take back photos or post their photos to social media. And they had a little boo-boo. We call accidents that kids have boo-boos, but they should have known better. It says here this was not an isolated event, meaning this isn't the only time this has happened. So other events have happened that have spoiled or ruined historic pieces of artwork. So it's really sad. Recently, similar disasters have been reported worldwide. I was telling Tom I've seen some of these stories in the news lately, and I think, who is being so careless around art like this? This is crazy. Who raised them? That's my first question. Who are their parents? Weren't they taught how to behave properly? But some of the kids that are young, they just don't care about other people and other people's property. So here was a child who damaged a Mark Rothko painting. I can understand more if a child damaged it, even though their parents, who probably brought them to the museum, or a teacher should have been watching more closely and maybe warn them about what to do and not to do. This child wanted to pretend to sit on a painting. That's not what you do to paintings either. So, yeah, there are lots of different sort of accidents that have happened. And recently, it seems like we're seeing more of these in the news, at least.
Yeah, in this sentence, we've got the pattern for a range of things, like from something to something else. So we've got a child damaging a Mark Rothko painting, and then somewhere else, a tourist was breaking an exhibit by pretending to sit on it. I think it was a work of art that looked like a chair or something like that, and the person sat on it to pose for a picture. Maybe they didn't think it was a work of art or something like that. I'm not quite sure.
They're just not thinking. It's like their brain is dead.
You just got to get that picture. Everybody's got to get those pictures and get them online as fast as possible and see how many likes you can get. And, of course, these things do happen from time to time. I'm not familiar with the artist Mark Rothko.
I am. He's very modern, and it's usually just patches of color. Okay. But I like the colors he puts together. You'll look at it and you'll think, well, I can do that. So, but yeah, he's definitely modern art.
Okay, maybe sort of like Jackson Pollock or something like that.
It's even more straight lines.
Okay,
Go look him up.
more
He's
geometric
fun.
or something like that.
Yeah.
So these are some things that happen in museums around the world. I was going to say that I've always been kind of surprised that museums have works of art on display that could be easily damaged. What if somebody is walking along and they trip over their shoelaces or something?
Yeah.
They could bump into a cabinet and destroy something that's hundreds of years old. So, this is kind of surprising to me that this hasn't happened more. And such incidents highlight why museum etiquette is increasingly crucial. So these are incidents, something that happened, or some things that happened. That's what an incident is, something that happens, usually historical or something like that.
It's usually bad. It's not always good. It's usually a bad thing.
Exactly. And so they tell us or highlight that museum etiquette is very crucial, or it's getting more and more crucial. It's extremely important because people seem to be losing the ability to behave themselves in museums. Now let's move on to the next paragraph here. It says, first, we must recognize that art and historical objects are fragile. Fragile here just means it can be easily broken. This can also be pronounced fragile. It depends on who you're talking to. The American pronunciation is fragile, but in the UK and Canada, I think they say fragile. And yes, indeed, we do have to recognize this. We have to know that, yes, art and these historical objects or artifacts can be easily broken. They are fragile, so we got to be careful.
We do. I have to tell you, though, having gone to the Modern Museum of Art in New York City is where a lot of the Rothko paintings are. They're not even, they're not covered by glass, so you can just reach out and touch them. So
if you want to, you probably can't. You're not supposed to.
No, you're not supposed to, guys. A lot of the paintings today are not, behind glass. It'll be sad if they have to start putting everything behind glass because dumb people are trying to touch things. But
yeah, I was disappointed when we went to the museum in Chicago and there was American Gothic there, but it was behind glass.
Yeah.
And there it is. That's the original painting, but it just looks kind of different when it's behind glass.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that they have to protect it, but still, I wish I could have seen the real thing. So, of course, these are incidents that tell us that, etiquette in museums is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, indeed, again, we need to recognize that these objects are fragile. And once damaged, they may never regain their original condition. So that can happen sometimes. I suppose they can try to restore certain works of art, like a sculpture. Maybe somebody knocked the arm off a sculpture. Maybe they can glue it back on or something like that. But still, it's not going to be the same thing.
Well, they're constantly restoring works of art, paintings. There are people who are hired to do just that, who work for the museum. But it just, the more we hurt things that are valuable, the shorter their lifespan is going to be, I would say. It says here that once they're damaged, they never regain their original condition. They're unable to fully restore them. Many common actions, though harmless at first glance, can have grave consequences. Grave here usually refers to the place where we bury bodies that from people who have passed away. You could say passed on, passed away. But here it just means something that's really serious. If you have someone who's in the hospital, they could be in critical condition, which is really serious. They could be in serious condition, grave condition, critical condition. Serious is not as serious. Serious is not as bad as critical or grave. Those are very, very, very tough situations to get through if you're a family member. I've been there. And then there's in fair condition. Good condition is what you really want to go for. But we're talking about art here. So be careful because what you do in the museum can have serious consequences.
Let's give you some examples here. For instance, or for example, touching artwork leaves fingerprints and oils that gradually deteriorate surfaces. So again, if you walk up and touch a work of art, there's oil in your fingers, so it's going to get into the painting. It might mix with the paint or whatever. And, of course, those are fingerprints as well, so they kind of ruin the appearance of something, especially if your hands are dirty. And these things will gradually deteriorate surfaces. You notice that I do have a little trouble actually pronouncing that word myself. Deteriorate. Deteriorate. That just means it goes to a worse condition. It gets worse and worse. So it just kind of ruins the surfaces.
Yeah, to deteriorate. Oh, it's not easy to say. You could also use worsen or decline or weaken, but someone's condition can deteriorate if they're ill, or it can improve, which you're hoping for. Yeah, I've found myself when I'm in museums or I'm looking at a gallery that has different exhibits up, sometimes I do reach out with my finger.
Uh-oh.
So, but, I'm never dumb enough to actually touch it, but I can see how children especially are wanting to touch because they love to touch things. So you have to really, if you bring children to a museum, you have to really watch them closely. That's, I think, understood. So that oil in our fingers can really damage the painting. Our fingerprints, you don't want fingerprints to be on priceless works of art. Furthermore, flash photography accelerates the fading of the colors and the textiles. So if you go and see, I've seen beautiful rugs that have been woven in Europe. And they were woven in like the 1200s or the 1300s. And they're hanging on a wall to protect them. They're not behind glass. You are not supposed to take photos of them because that light actually makes the colors in the thread just fade. A pigment is just another word for a color, something that gives something a color. Paints will have different pigments. You could talk about different pigments in someone's face or their hair. Our hair has different pigments and different colors. But every time you use that flash on a camera, it fades any color that it's in front of. So you have to be really careful.
Right. Pigments usually contain like little pieces of matter or material or whatever they're made of, and you get pigments from different sources to make those different colors. And I did want to say that it seems that people don't really use flash photography anymore because the modern digital cameras have really high sensitivity. You can go ISO, 3200 or something like that, or 32,000 or whatever. So you really don't need to use flash photography anymore, but still.
People still are, though.
Yeah, you don't see it so much, though, but it does happen from time to time. I like to use flash on my camera as well for special kinds of effects, but I would never do it in a museum for the reasons stated here in our article. And moving on, large equipment such as tripods or selfie sticks may bump into exhibits and cause accidents. Okay, so sometimes, of course, when you are in a museum and you want to take pictures, you might use some other equipment like a tripod, which holds your camera still so you can use a slower shutter speed or shoot in low light or whatever. But those tripods can actually bump into the paintings, and those selfie sticks could do that as well. Selfie sticks don't seem to be as common as they used to be. I don't seem to see them as much as I used to. But
Thank goodness.
But they're still around. So yeah, if you pull out a selfie stick and want to take a selfie, it's possible you might bump into the paintings and cause some damage.
Or you might bump into someone behind you or in front of you, and they will hit the painting. That's not their fault either. I've seen that happen.
Or you might accidentally poke someone's eye out.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful there. And each of these actions not only harms the displays, but also diminishes the experience for others. So these are some possibilities that could come about by using large equipment. So please be careful when you get to museums. We're going to take a break right now and listen to our Chinese teacher, but we'll be right back.
Hello everyone, 我是 Patrick， 今天讲解的是 Why Museum Etiquette Matters More Than Ever。这个单元是文艺选填的练习题，内容介绍的是博物馆参访礼仪。大家有没有想过，博物馆的文物都很珍贵，如果因为我们个人因素而损坏了这些文物，我们可是赔不起的。这篇文章呢，就提供了很多宝贵的建议，让我们不至于在博物馆里面变成活动灾难。好，我们一起来看到第一题。在段落开头就提到，今年6月，有一名参观的人在意大利佛罗伦斯的乌菲兹美术馆，他在摆拍的时候呢，损坏了一幅17世纪的画作。那当然就上了头条，震惊了艺术界嘛。接着就是题干 ，This was not。那后面呢有个定冠词 a 或 an， 后面呢是 event。好，就是以上这件事情并非空格事件。我们知道夹在不定冠词和名词当中需要形容词做修饰，比方说 a big event 大事件， a historic event 历史事件。因为后面的句子提到，除了意大利，其他地方也有展品受到游客破坏的情况。从上下文推测，所以第一题正确答案是 D isolated 个别的孤立的，表示佛罗伦斯乌菲兹美术馆摆拍破坏画作的事件不算是个案。再接着我们看第二段，作者在第一段的时候，借着世界各地美术馆发生展览品受损的事件呢，最后一句提出博物馆礼仪的重要性，那作为整篇文章的主旨句嘛。那才看到我们的第二题这在第二段的第一个句子。首先我们必须认知到艺术品和历史文物空格，下一句提到一旦受损，这些文物就可能无法恢复原状了。因为空格前是 be 动词 are， 后面只能加形容词做补语， 修饰主词 art and historical object， 考量文意要前后连贯，因此我们选 H fragile 脆弱。第二题正确答案是 H。紧接着看到第三题，许多司空见惯的行为，虽然乍看之下无伤大雅，却可能有空格后果。这里的 though 是解题关键，是副词连接词，表示重大转折。虽然看似没什么的小动作，但结果却很严重。Be grave 这个的是严重、重大的意思，刚好可以修饰名词 consequences 后果。所以第三题答案选 B。接着第四题，例如触摸艺术品会留下指纹和油脂，而这些触摸留下的痕迹会逐渐空格表面。That 在这里呢是冠带，代替前面的指纹和油脂，而关系子句并没有动词，因为先行词 fingerprints 和 oils 是复数名词，所以我们要找一个原形动词，不要加上 s， 单数名词才要搭配动词加 s。所以第四题答案选 J deteriorate， 表示指纹还有油脂呢都会让文物的表面劣化。此外，闪光灯摄影会加速颜料和织品褪色，像脚架或自拍棒这些器材呢，也可能会碰到产品，酿成意外。接着我们看第五题，这些行为每一项都不只损坏展品，也会空格他人的观展体验。因为 not only but also 是双词对等连接词，前后词性要对等。not only 后面加上及物动词片语 harms the displays， but also 后面也应该要加及物动词。那考量前后文意，我们选 A diminishes， 降低、减少，表示这些不当行为不仅会损害展品，也会降低他人的参观品质。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's museum etiquette. Why does it matter? It does matter. It's always mattered, but it's mattering even more now because we're seeing that some of the younger generation in particular aren't really very careful around priceless works of art. And some of them are protesting over things, Tom, like they don't think that we should be using oil and gas anymore. And so they'll go into a museum and destroy a painting to get attention. So what we're talking about today, though, are more accidents that happen because people aren't careful, or maybe they aren't taught about museum etiquette. That's the behavior that we should always be aware of when we go into museums. You don't touch paintings. You don't take pictures of art with a flash because it affects the pigment or the colors. There are lots of things that we need to be aware of. You shouldn't be running around a museum. You should be walking slowly and being, I think you need to be respectful of other people in the museum as well. I don't like to go to a museum and hear some loud conversation either on a phone or between two people. So museums are really kind of special places and we need to behave very respectfully inside.
We certainly do. And of course, in museums, you need to make sure you can take pictures of things because sometimes they do allow photography, but you need to ask first.
Yeah.
Sometimes, of course, they have signs that say absolutely no photography allowed. So be aware of those notices in a museum. And I should say sometimes they even allow you to touch the works of art. But again, you need to be given permission to do that and look for signs that say you can do that. Like the museum here of the contemporary art in Taipei, sometimes they have exhibitions that allow visitors to actually touch the works of art. Not often, though, okay? So be careful there. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, given these concerns, here are some recommendations for responsible museum visits. Okay, so again, we need to consider these concerns, these issues, these incidents. So let's take them into consideration and thinking about them. Let's talk about some recommendations for responsible museum visits. Now, first of all, before entering, deposit large bags in lockers to avoid accidental contact with items. Now, that actually explains it for me every time I go to a museum here in Taipei. they see your bag and they say you need to check your bag in. I've never really wondered why they do that, or are they afraid you have a camera in there?
Or maybe you'll steal something.
Or you have water in there and you'll spill it on the works of art or something like that. But actually, they're doing that because you're carrying those bags around and you might, turn around. Oh, let me go look over here. And then the bag that's, behind you on your back there actually bumps into a sculpture and knocks it to the floor or something. So that's why they do that. So you need to deposit them in large lockers. A locker, of course, is kind of a case that you can put something in. It has a door and a lock on it. Kids in schools in America have their own lockers where they can put their coats and put their textbooks in and things like that. And you want to, of course, keep those bags in those lockers so you don't bump into things.
So always consult and follow photography policies. They'll have the museum-specific policies up on a wall or posted somewhere so everyone can see. Or maybe there are special exhibits that have even more strict policies. You always need to be aware of those. So if something is prohibited, that's one of our vocab words. It just means it's not allowed. Officially, it's not allowed. So it's forbidden or something has been banned, but you can't do it. So some of these museums prohibit or forbid pictures altogether. You can't even take any pictures. Once inside, you need to maintain or keep a respectful distance from exhibits. Here, it just means you're showing politeness by not getting too close. You're being respectful. We should be that way with each other, too. Sometimes I'll be in a line and I'll feel like someone's right on behind me, and I'd want to turn around and go, back up. You're too close. You just need to keep a respectful distance from the exhibits. If you're an arm's length away, you can't touch it or hit it or hurt it.
Okay, moving on here, the next sentence says, since sound travels easily in exhibition halls, it's easy to make noise, use phones and audio guides quietly and speak in soft tones. So you're going to have your phone with you, and then they've got these audio guides which are giving you the narration of the exhibition or whatever. Use them quietly, and if you need to talk to somebody, don't talk too loudly. Talk in soft tones.
That's good advice. So you also need to always remember you're never going to eat food or take your drink inside into these exhibition areas because spills and crumbs, little pieces of food that come from what you're eating can contaminate displays and attract pests. So you don't want that. If you contaminate something, you make it dirty or unsafe. You kind of spoil it or infect it or maybe even pollute it by contaminating something. Unfortunately, as we've seen from recent incidents, and they're in the news, you can see them, these basic rules are sometimes ignored in the rush to document or record your museum visits. So you need to always be aware that you're visiting priceless things and act accordingly. That's why we have to act responsibly. So remind your friends if they overlook a rule and notify, let the staff there know. That's what notify means, just to let someone know about something officially. You need to notify staff if you see or witness inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate means not proper behavior or behavior that's suitable for that situation. You can go ahead and tell the staff that you see something a little fishy. By practicing thoughtful etiquette, we ensure these treasures are preserved for future generations to appreciate, and that's sure important.
Yeah, I've seen people in Taiwan here behaving pretty well in museums.
Yeah.
But still there are people in other parts of the world who don't behave so well in museums. I'm not going to name names, but of course we probably know who we're talking about. But in any case, please remember these rules in museums, and everybody can experience these museums and remember them for a long time. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
再来看到第6题，有卷以上所提出的这些顾虑，在此有空格，可以让大家参观博物馆的时候能够善尽旅客的责任。Here are 或 here is 这个句型呢，相信大家并不陌生。后面加上名词，表示这里有什么。比方说 ，Here's the key you were looking for， 这就是你在找的钥匙。所以我们需要找复数名词 see recommendations 建议是复数的，那表示 有鉴于呢前一段提到的各种这种参观礼仪的问题哦，在这边对于妥善参观博物馆呢，我们有一些建议，所以第6题答案选 C。入馆前，请将大型的包包放在置物柜，才不会呢碰触到展品。那也请大家要看清楚相关的规定，有些博物馆完全禁止拍照。入馆以后呢，也请和展品表示一定的距离。一般来说，至少呢要是1只手背左右。再来，我们看到第7题哦。好，由于声音在展厅里面容易空格，请安静的用手机还有语音导览器。好，那 since 副词连接词呢表示因为，那所引导的子句里只有主词 sound 没有动词，因此我们需要动词要有第3人称变化加上 s， 考量和主词 sound 的词语搭配还有前后文，我们选 G。第7题正确答案是 G。再来第8题这边，空格前是及物动词 attract， 空格就应该用名词当受词，我们选 E， pests 害虫来当做受词。第8题正确答案是 E。 那再来第9题呢，请注意哦，前面如果有 be 动词 80% 加上过去动词就会构成被动语态，选 I ignore 呢，忽略的意思。好，那这边加上去语义通顺，所以第9题选 I。 最后是第10题 if they， 这里呢算是条件子句，那后面呢我们看到 if 这个子句里面没有动词，所以我们选 F overlook 忽略来当做动词。第10题正确答案是 F。 以上就是我们针对这一篇文意选填所做的中文讲解。
Okay, we're at the end of our lesson for today. Thanks for joining us and enjoy your next visit to a museum. And report any suspicious activity. Make sure all the works of art and the sculptures and the artifacts are protected for future reference. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.